Hey everyone, today we're going to unlock a really powerful way to learn English that will make you sound way more natural and fluent. So let's just dive right in. Have you ever had this thought? You know, you've learned hundreds, maybe even thousands of English words, but when you actually try to speak, it just feels slow, a little clunky, maybe even robotic. It is such a common frustration for learners, so trust me, you are definitely not alone on this one. So, what's the deal? Well, the problem often comes down to this thing called the word-for-word trap. This happens when you think of a sentence in your native language and then you try to translate every single word one by one into English. It basically turns speaking into this slow, really difficult puzzle. And the result? Well, it usually sounds a little bit off. Let me show you a classic example. A lot of learners, and this is totally normal, might directly translate eat medicine from their language. But a native English speaker would always say take medicine. That phrase, take medicine, that's the chunk. When you learn it as one unit, it's not only faster and easier, it sounds perfectly natural. Okay, enough theory. Let's put this into practice, shall we? We're going to start with a group of verbs that are all about changing the shape or form of something. Get ready, we've got some great real-world examples coming up. First up, we've got fold and crumple. You know, after you do laundry, someone might say, sure, I'll fold the towels. But if they're frustrated with a report, you might hear, ugh, don't crumple the paper. See? The chunk includes the object. It paints the whole picture. Okay, next up. Imagine you're about to get to work on a tough project. You might say, all right, time to roll up my sleeves. It's a classic chunk. Or if you need to hold a box closed, you'd stretch a rubber band around it. You see, you're learning the action and its partner object all at once. And to wrap up this first part, we have press and wipe. I mean, in today's world, we are always pressing buttons. But you don't just press, you press the button. And what about after dinner? You wipe the table. These are super simple, everyday chunks you can start using right away. All right, you ready for part 2? Let's move on to our second category. These verbs are all about handling liquids, which is something we do all the time, especially when we're in the kitchen. Now, this is a great pair, pour and spill. One is on purpose, the other, not so much. Pouring is intentional. Someone might ask you to pour me a glass of water. But spilling is an accident. So someone might warn you, be careful not to spill your drink. The chunk helps you get the whole situation, not just the action. This next pair is where you can really see the power of using the right chunk. You squeeze some lemon into your tea to get the juice out, but you'd never say you squeeze a wet towel. A native speaker would always say, can you wring it out? Getting this chunk right makes your English sound so much more advanced. And here we are, our final section. This time, we've got verbs that involve fixing things, applying a little force, or just, dealing with a problem. These are some incredibly useful action words. First, let's look at peel and bandage. When you're getting a snack ready, you peel a banana or peel an apple. It's a standard kitchen chunk. And if someone gets a little cut, the caring thing to do is offer to bandage your finger. See how that chunk is tied to being helpful? Here's another great pair. Crack and squash. What's the very first thing you do when you make breakfast? Well, you crack an egg. And what about that spider on the floor? You squash it. These chunks are direct, clear, and exactly what a native speaker would say. And our last two verbs for today, brush and nail. To get potatoes clean, you might need to brush the dirt off. And for a little home improvement, you nail it to the wall. What's really important here are those little words that come after, off and to. They are part of the chunk and make all the difference. So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? It's this. You haven't just learned a bunch of new words today. No way. You've learned a completely new method for thinking in English. And that, my friends, is how you go from just speaking English to speaking it naturally. So you want to make this your new English superpower? Here's what you do. 3 simple steps. Number 1, stop trying to memorize single isolated words. Number 2, start actively noticing these word chunks everywhere, in movies, in songs, in conversations. And finally, number 3, when you speak, practice using the entire chunk, not just the verb. All right, so I'm going to leave you with a little challenge, a question to think about. Now that your brain is tuned to see them, what word chunks will you discover out in the world today? Keep listening, keep noticing, and I promise, you'll be speaking more fluently before you even know it.